is TC Casey. I am Savannah, and today I'm going to be teaching you about Anneliese Marie Frank, otherwise known as Anne Frank. Anne Frank is one of the most commonly known victims of the Holocaust. I'm going to do a brief overview of the Holocaust, but my next video is going to be all about the Holocaust. I'm doing a series on all things about World War II, so I'm going to be talking about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Corrie ten Boom, D-Day, Hitler, all of those things. So right after World War I happened, Germany was in a state of poverty, so everyone was really poor. And then Hitler came in, and he basically took over. He gave everyone hope that they were going to become a better nation. And so he took over. But one of the ways that he said that Germany was going to become a better nation was by wiping out everyone who was not like pure German. So like someone who was German and French, he didn't like them. Or someone who was German and Jew, he didn't want them to live in Germany. He thought that they were inferior from all the like pure Germans. So that is basically what happened to most of the people he didn't like. Was they either went into hiding, so they hid from everyone. For several years they were killed, or they had to live in concentration camps where they would probably die. So a concentration camp was a big like prison almost for a whole bunch of people who were not pure Germans, but they had to work there, and they had to like make clothes and ropes and all that stuff for the German army. So Anne Frank was born June 12th in 1929 in Frankfurt, Germany. So she was originally from Germany, and she died in February of 1945. There's not a clear day where she died. She died in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. She lived in Germany for 4 years before moving to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, because she moved right when Hitler took over. So her family was Jewish German, and so they moved because they knew that Hitler didn't like the Jews. Her father was Mr. Otto Frank, her mother was Edith Frank, and she had one sister named Margaret Frank. She was her older sister. Otto is her father. Otto worked at the Opekta Works Company, and he sold fruit pecks, and he worked there until 1940. Anne Frank went to a Montessori Lyceum Amsterdam, which is a school, but it has a funny name because it's different than the way that we would name schools. She went there until 1941, and then she went to the Jewish Lyceum Amsterdam. So the Montessori Lyceum Amsterdam then became a school for only German children, and then the Jewish Lyceum Amsterdam was for Jewish children. A year before attending the Jewish school, so in 1940, Hitler invaded and took over the Netherlands. As well as taking over, he put many restrictions on the Jewish people. So some of the restrictions were they couldn't be in the military, they couldn't be like bankers, they couldn't teach, they had to register themselves and all of their belongings to Nazi Germany. They could not own a company, they could not be doctors, they couldn't be involved in the government for jobs. They had to carry around, at first they had to carry around a Jewish identity card, so it was like an ID, but it says that they were Jewish and all about them. And then eventually they had to wear a yellow Star of David on their clothes because they were Jewish. Many of the Jewish restrictions deeply impacted the Frank family, so they had to go to different schools. They had to go back in their house at 8 o'clock. They weren't allowed to come out of their house at 8 o'clock. Anne's father lost his job because he partly owned the company, and you weren't allowed to own any companies. So on Anne's 13th birthday, she received a red checkered diary which she recorded all of her, every single day of her life for like a few years. And I actually have a copy of her diary. It's not the original one, obviously, but it's her father published it after the Holocaust happened. And it's really interesting to read because it has some stuff about before Hitler invaded and then after when she went into hiding. So you can get this book on Amazon or at your local bookstore, or maybe you can borrow it from a friend to read, but it was a really interesting book. In 1942, the Franks received a letter that Anne's older sister Margaret had to attend a concentration camp. So like I said before, it was like a prison for Jewish people, and so Margaret was only like 16 maybe when they got the letter, and the Franks family was already planning on going into hiding. So when they got that letter, they just kind of rushed it. So they were going to wait a year or two, but then they just decided to already go into hiding. So the Franks went into hiding in 1942. They had two families come with them. The Van Pels family came with them, and then one person named Fritz Piffer came with them. Fritz Piffer was a doctor, and the Van Pels had one son named Peter. At first, going into hiding was really fun because, like, you're in this new place, and you had people come over all the time. But Anne thought it was an adventure. But then, slowly, within the first month or so, she didn't think it was an adventure anymore because she couldn't go outside, she couldn't go to school, she had to share a room with Fritz Piffer, she had no personal space, and then one of Miss Van Pels, who was the wife of Mr. Van Pels, she didn't like Anne, so she was always insulting Anne for the way she acted. And then eventually, Anne Frank and her family were arrested in 1944, so they were in hiding for 2 whole years. 2 whole years not going to school, not talking to anyone, not going outside. And then since they were found in hiding, since they were hiding from the government, they were charged as criminals. So if they weren't hiding, maybe they wouldn't have been charged as criminals, maybe they would have been fined. But they were charged as criminals. So all the 4 Franks went to Auschwitz concentration camp, and then later Anne and Margaret were moved to Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, where they both died of typhoid. So all 3 of Edith, Anne, and Margaret all died in concentration camps. And Otto Frank was the only one who survived the Holocaust. Anne's diary, like I said, was published by her father some years after. It has now been translated into 70 different languages with over 30 million copies sold. I have this book, which is a really big book because it's like 2 years filled with just her talking about her life and explaining things about the Holocaust. But then we also have this book, it says Who Was Anne Frank, and it's part of the Who Was series. And it's shorter, it has like, that paint is holding it up, but it has pictures in it and random facts about it as well as stories. So this is great for younger kids who still need to learn about the Holocaust. That's all I have today. Make sure you like and subscribe, and stay tuned for my next video, which is going to be about the Holocaust.